Alright, so today this is my first video after being gone for about 3 weeks due to an unexpected moving situation. So I'm going to kick this off with a subject I've seen talked a lot about on my various groups I'm a part of, which is having a troublesome player or troublesome DM. And this is a very generalized topic, which means I have a lot to go over, but it's not going to be too terribly long of a video because at the end the problem is quite simple and similar in all cases, and the resolution is universally applicable. But the problem you're dealing with when you have a unsavory player DM is you have the sense of commitment to the group, and that's the biggest issue. If you have a problem player and his or her problems aren't being properly addressed, like let's say they cheat on their dice rolls, or they play characters that are abrasive and non-compliant to the campaign and the DM won't do anything about it, or let's say you have a DM who has favoritism towards a certain player, or a DM that demands railroading. All of these issues you can go on for days about how many issues can be wrong with a given player or DM. Now let's talk about the core issue. You have a person at your table that is conducting themselves in a fashion that is interfering with your good time. That's the core issue. It doesn't matter how they're interfering with you having a good time, and it doesn't matter to what degree they're interfering with you having a good time, because the core issue doesn't change. So when you deal with that, whether it be the DM or player, you have one of two outcomes. Either you are willing to put up with it and seek compromise, or you are willing or you are not. If you are willing to put up with it and seek compromise, then you will seek compromise until it is either met or you realize compromise will not happen and you will have to accept the situation as it is. Beyond that, then you are back to the same outcome as if you were unwilling to deal with it, which is you need to either remove the player if you have the authority to do so, or if you do not, you need to leave yourself. Now that seems to be very sudden this early on into the video, but I'm going to elaborate, I promise. It's not that simple. I know I'm a gamer of 24 years. You don't want to just up and walk out on your group. So let's work on what we can do to reason with the given individual. But at the end, it does boil down to that simple of a process. It may not be easy, but it is that simple. So what do you have when you have this problem individual? There's a difficulty confronting them. Of course, it's not that easy to tell someone, hey, even though it's just a game, it's kind of a big deal. That's the hardest part. It doesn't matter how confident you are, it doesn't matter how shy you are, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. The problem you run into is it's a very simple concept of this is a game and there shouldn't be that big of a deal. So when is it appropriate to address it's become a big deal, we need to address this, or how much further do you need to let it go before it reaches that point? And the fine line with a lot of people is if you just have a person who plays very audacious characters that are non-compliant with the plot, at the end of the day, how bothersome is that? Are you really not going to be able to continue the plot? Because there are characters that are so disruptive that it wrecks the plot. They keep killing key NPCs, or they steal all the other players' equipment and has resulted in a death or two. That's a problem that legitimately and objectively needs to be addressed. But if you have a person who never stops mimicking characters they've seen in a TV show or a movie or a book, at the end of the day, that's a personal irritation on your part. And on that note, you really have no right to protest that. If it's that big of an issue to you, that it is something of that equivalently small scale, because at the end of the day it is. It doesn't matter how much it bothers you. If they're doing such as mimicking a character on a TV show or a movie, or if they never play anyone but a character that is a carbon copy of their personality. If you have a player who always plays chaotic neutral so that they can do stupid things, but those stupid things don't disrupt the plot, they're just annoying. at the end of the day, and I keep saying that because that's the thing, at the final straw, does it break the game? Does it disrupt the good time? Or is it a personal irritation? And the difference all boils down to, are you physically and mentally incapable of ignoring it? In the case of the chaotic neutral NPC that kills the plot hooks, that steals everyone's gear, that's something you can't ignore. But if they're constantly sleeping with the barmaid, if they're, constantly finagling the price of magic items to ridiculously low prices, if they're doing petty things like that that just are irritating, you need to get over it. It's irritating, I know, I've seen it a million times, but I'll be honest, many of my players, especially the newer ones, make an effort to copy characters they're familiar with from film and literature because it's something they know how to be. And as they adapt, they become something else. But every so often a new movie's going to come out, they'll mimic that character, or they'll make it their own. And I encourage that because it allows them to have a good time. If that's what they need to have a good time, let them do it. Let them sleep with that barmaid. Let them do shenanigans. As long as it's not disrupting the plot, that's their interpretation of a good time. If it's a personal irritation for you, you really don't have room to argue it. At least not objectively. But there's the difference you need to boil down to. Is it actively disrupting the game versus personally irritating? This is a very generalized subject, but it's one that I see far too often, and it's something that people need to come to terms with. You need to come to terms with the fact that there's going to be an irritating player. But the fact that they're not so irritating, so disruptive, that they have been asked to leave the game, that says something, or at least that people don't want them to leave the game. At the end of the day, if you can go, he's irritating, but he did this cool thing earlier, they're still good. Let them do their dumb thing. That's their interpretation of role-playing. I have players, and they are pretty celibate individuals in real life. They play sexually active characters. I have players who are very passive individuals. They play violent as crap individuals in the game. And I've seen them cycle in and out over my gaming career. It's just, people roleplay differently. You don't get to tell them how they will and will not roleplay just because their means of having a good time is different than yours. The instant their means of having a good time legitimately encroaches on your turf, on your experience, the moment it goes beyond that personal irritation, then you absolutely should speak up. You should absolutely tell them, hey, I have an issue with this, or bring it up to the DM and they can bring it up to the player. Or if it is the DM, then, well, you're going to have to bring it up to them anyway, because who else is going to? It's a very simple thing. If you have somebody who is taking an action that disrupts your game, then let them know. Most people are quite reasonable. Now, if it gets worse because you brought it up, then yeah, you need to look at removing them. Because at that point, their quirks are things that they find justifiable to the point of spite, and they're the people that just, once you set them off, they go downhill. And those are the people you need to remove because you don't want to be there when the explosion goes off unexpectedly. Those are a different breed of people, and they should be met with accordingly. Now, I hope you found this video informative. I know it was very generalized, but it's some solid advice that a lot of gamers need. If at the end of the day it just irritates you, let it go. That's their roleplay experience. If it legitimately disrupts it, bring it up to them. Bring it up to the DM. If they are the DM, then let them know, hey, this is distracting from my good time. And if they decide to shut you down and persist, then you may want to consider whether or not the commitment to the group is worth it. If you like what I gave here, please subscribe. There'll be more to come. I may do another video tonight even. I'd like to get on the next on my alignment series of what is chaotic good. So, until next time, happy adventures, guys.